we at the moment, and this was some advice given us early on, it was like you need to get to around 80 customers initially to be able to then start running cohort information and getting an idea of who your ideal fit is. So it's not something that, like, if we were losing huge sums of money, we'd be all over that, right? But we've got the burn multiple. We understand where we're at. We've got a path to profitability. So we're just hell bent on getting to 80, 90 customers and then sitting back and understanding, okay, who is the ideal fit here? Like, who is the perfect fit for what we have now, and where can we then take that?
Welcome to Insights as a Service. This week, I'm joined by Adam Ross from CloudOlive. We're going to be talking about how to make sure you're billing effectively in a world of an ever-increasing number of SaaS vendors and applications that MSPs are using. And I'm also hoping that I can dive into your startup journey as well. Adam, how are you going?
Yeah, really good, man. Thanks for having us.
Very, very welcome. Whereabouts are you at the moment? You in NZ?
In Sydney.
Okay. So maybe let's start with, we'll go into more depth about how you started CloudOlive later, but let's talk about the problem it actually solves to give people a sense of who you are and what your business does.
Yeah, by all means. So we've, it actually helps to go back a step just into where I've spent the last 10 years. And that was actually working originally at an MSP and then later at Autotask for 8 to 10 years or so, and Datto for the last 2 after they took us over. So when I was at Autotask, and I was actually one of the first employee here in Oz back in 2011, and
all right,
it was about that time that SaaS was becoming the norm, and I suppose though the PSAs of the world were built a long time before subscription software was how everyone consumed, right? So one of the questions that we would get asked over and over and over and over again at Autotask was, so how do all of your other MSPs manage all of the license fluctuations that occur on a monthly basis across all of our customers? And it was about 2012 that it started to sprinkle in that there's a problem here that needs to be solved at some point, and we just never had an answer at Autotask. And when my time at Autotask and Datto came to a close, I met an epic co-founder who can build anything in Enrico, and he and I have set out to, in phase one, what we're solving is we can agnostically connect to any software vendor that any MSP resells. And when we ingest that data, we can then easily compare that to what's inside of their Autotask or ConnectWise and just show them where they're under or overbilling clients, and of course help them make the adjustments or at least track it and centralize the whole process.
And how big's the problem from where you sit? You know, with the MSPs that you work with, how much over or under, probably more likely, are they actually billing?
So like we see it as, we assume now when we walk into an MSP, and if they're running a vendor manually, let's say they've got 100 line items coming from distributor A, if they're manually updating ththings left and right every single month, we assume that 5 of those 100 lines just will not be in their PSA at all to start with. Okay. Right. And then on the initial cleanup, we anticipate that they're missing out on somewhere between 10 to 15% of the service revenues or subscription revenues that they're reselling. And people initially come to us because they wish to save time, and we would give them back 80% of the time they're spending managing this process on a monthly basis. Most of them are doing so. It's pretty significant. And one of the pieces that we've learned, it's almost the initial wow factor that they have within CloudOlive is when they can see everything from their supplier matches up with their PSA, meaning unit costs are correct, their reporting is correct, they're not over or underbilling clients, the peace of mind that comes with that, and something that just helps them feel like they're doing a really good job in the role that they're meant to be doing. That entire summary, I guess, but pretty big issue with not a lot of solutions out there at the moment.
It's a massive issue, and obviously it's only going to get worse as an MSP scales, right? So
absolutely, absolutely.
What's the sort of? I think you guys just hit 50 MSPs live on the platform, right?
Sure have.
Yeah. Congrats, well done.
Thanks,
how long has that taken? How long have you guys been around?
So we we incorporated just as COVID hit in April 2020, and my co-founder and I met in February of 2020 on a startup incubator. So we were one of 80 people that were selected for this 12-week, like ridiculously intense program. Nobody knew anyone, and the whole idea was run by a venture capital firm. This one was based in Sydney, but they're all over the world, and they run you pretty hard. And their whole concept is that if they can bring together a founding team that has someone that can build tech, someone that can sell, and then a deep domain knowledge, like a 0.1% understanding of something, if you give them the right capital and support, they can build something epic. And at the end of that 12 weeks, it's a cool program because you get to vet lots of different ideas. You get to work with different people, qualify ideas in and out. Like at some point in time, we were going to be doing like building a unicorn out of recycling, and then it was a climate change. And then what happened during that process was the thing that I understand better than anyone is like the back end systems of the Autotask of the world and the billing, and we just kept trickling back into billing reconciliation, and that's where we that's where the unfair advantage sits, I guess, for Enrico and I. So we've got those three pillars in the founding team, and we were one of the 11 companies that got funded out of the 38 that pitched at the end of that 12 weeks, and that kicked us off, and here we are now.
That's an amazing story. Yeah, that's a pretty intense time to be launching. So did you? I guess that's the funding that allowed you to go all in, though, right? Like you didn't have to kind of have it as a side gig while you were kind of keeping a day job somewhere.
Well, yes and no. We fortunately leaving Datto at the end, there was, I guess, some savings kicking around that gave us a few options. But Antler invest $155,000 and take 10% in your company to start off with, okay? And as a service fee, they take back 55. So you're left with 100 grand. And that 100 grand, when you're building something from nothing, like literally from nothing, it doesn't go a long way. And so that was in April, we were transferred it. In December, we couldn't pay ourselves a salary because we ran out of money. And then as we were waiting so it was just a month or so, and then we'd gone out and raised another round of capital. First time ever doing that. That was an incredible process when you've got no product and you've just got a hypothesis and you're trying to cook up to all these investors that you're going to give them a healthy return on their money. That we then could pay ourselves in Jan when the first tranche of that investment came in afterwards.
That's a scary moment, especially December. There's a few things going on then, typically Christmas, for example. But so how did you do a valuation method on that capital raise? What did you guys use as the basis on which you set a price for a share?
Yeah, good question. So the cool thing about going through Antler was they came out and said, your company is going to be worth this if we back you. And Enrico and I decided to work with each other at about week 7. So we were only 4 to 5 weeks in. We had no product, we had nothing, but they at least gave us, from an official venture capital firm, this is your valuation, go out into market. So that was cool. That was a big tick. And they also gave us a structure to build the company around. Second to that, we just went out and all the other 11 companies that were around us, they all raised at a specific valuation, very similar to one another. And we just went out there and said, we're worth that as well. And it took a while to get some momentum in that. But what happens is someone makes a signal and goes, yeah, I back these guys. I back these guys as founders. They've got that domain knowledge and they're good blokes and they've clearly got this understanding of this thing. Like I just want to buy front row tickets and be part of this journey with them. And as that happened more and more, we just were like it took about 6 months and all of a sudden it came very quickly indeed,
like
to eventually
that
close that round.
Kind of effect.
Yeah, big time.
That's cool. How'd you come up with CloudOlive as a name?
That's a good question. So so Enrico, my co-founder, he speaks a whole heap of languages. Originally from Italy, but he speaks a ton of languages. So as we were going through the different options for a company name, we thought cloud because we're heading out into that big wide world. And then when we were throwing other words in there, he would cycle through his head sound weird in French or Italian or something. And then eventually we landed on CloudOlive, and we were like, does .com exist? Yep. Does this exist? And I don't know why, nobody had put those two words together in anything before. And yeah, he then cycled through all of his different languages, and it didn't sound weird at all. So we rolled with it, and they're pretty pleased with it now.
Yeah, nice. It's certainly distinctive. I was actually
Yeah.
in at an event in the States a little while ago now, and I came across a company that was an exhibitor at I think it was an IT Nations event. I'm not sure, but it was something along those lines, very MSP targeted. And there was
Mm-hmm.
a company that was exhibiting there. I genuinely can't remember their name, but they did something similar to you. I can't be sure it was exactly the same, but I said, "Oh, I'm actually speaking with the founder of CloudOlive." So he was like, "Oh yeah, we know them." And this American company already knew who you guys were
Yeah,
over there. And I think obviously distinctive product, distinctive name. It all gets you noticed.
sure.
So tell me, like, with the people who you're dealing with, these 50 MSPs, how much did you have to educate them on the problem, as opposed to them being aware that the way they were operating wasn't scalable or wasn't best practice?
Yeah. So one thing to think about as a startup is those first 4 to 5 customers. Actually, the first 4 to 5 customers we won on, we didn't have a product, so we acted as the software. We literally put A to B. We worked in spreadsheets. It was actually a New Zealand-based client was number one for us, and yeah, super grateful that they gave us that opportunity. And like as we spoke to different companies and we're using the word reconciliation, some would be like, yep, this is a huge problem that we've got. And it was very, very easy to convert them into the next stages, right? It seems that it goes in waves. Like we got to 4 customers really quick. And then we were bouncing around for sort of the next 4 to 5 months as we were building out technology around them. And then when we then released a pretty important update where we could just read from the PSAs and give them some really cool analysis, like really super quick, that's hard to get their hands on. That it then took us to the next stage. So the key part of it was just being relentlessly consistent across LinkedIn. So one of the VCs that we spoke with, there was a limited partner of Antler who was just saying he's built and exited a Series B company, and he was saying to us that like it just takes a lot longer than you expect in everything. So I made a pact at that point myself that every single week, without fail, until for the next 7 years is what I said, we will be at least posting on LinkedIn. Okay, every single week. And the effort involved in doing that initially was a lot. I'm sure you're facing this actually with the podcast, right? Podcast 1 was probably a lot more stressful than podcast 50 or whatever you're at. And it's the same thing with
Totally.
LinkedIn. And you learn, like it's like anything, it's just that flywheel building in different areas. You work out what's working, you work out what's not. And the better posts for us are the ones which fall flat on their face and do not work at all. Because you're like, cool, what can we take away from that? What can we learn from that? And then something like goes a lot more viral, and you go, cool, what did we learn from that? And there's no emotion in it. There's absolutely no emotion in it. And it's just trying to understand, cool, how do we get up tomorrow and sort of improve from where we were the day before, and just keep doing that relentlessly in every aspect of the business.
Class. So what advice would, obviously LinkedIn, that's interesting takeaway. What advice would you give other startups in the tech sector in terms of using LinkedIn? Like, what's landed for you?
I think you just got to start initially, like that pact with myself of just doing something every single week for the next 7 years, and then that one became two, then it became like one every now and again. But I now have just got a cadence and a rhythm going. So I think number one, you just got to start. That's the only way to learn. Like the advice that I may give is specific to our arrangement at our time and our understanding and our problem and our connections and etc. But the like if it aligns to them, then great, use that advice and information. But I think you have to learn it yourself. There's no shortcuts in. It's one of the things I love about startups. Like you can spend a year building something longer. You can have this grand vision and build this epic thing, and then nobody interacts with it. And you're like, oh, it sucks. And when the rubber hits the road, that's where the just trying to remove emotion from every aspect of it, which is hard because it's your baby.
I
Trying to
was going to
remove
say, yeah.
emotion. Yeah, removing the emotion and just going, cool, if it works, great. Why did it work? If it didn't work, cool. Why didn't it work? And that, like, kudos to my co-founder, Enrico. He's had experience in built startups before, and been very fortunate just to work and like learn from him on a daily basis. And he's very much helped instill that type of discipline in us. And it's just like, cool, let's dust it off and keep moving.
Did you guys meet for the first time in that sort of incubator program, or
Yeah,
did
we
you
did.
go?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So day one, probably about 5 to 9, we're just walking around meeting all these people. And I was like, oh, hey, shook his hand and was like, so what do you do? And he went, I build enterprise software. And I was like, oh, interesting. I sell enterprise software. And he's just like, oh, cool. And then we went in, like, speed dated other potential co-founders. And then we just kept coming back. And at week 7, we went, like, with or without Antler's funding, he and I we're going to have a go. We're going to build something out of this. And I was looking for someone who had startup experience and could build, and Enrico's got that in droves. So, kind of fortunate just at that intersection where two of us can handle quite a lot of this.
That's really interesting. There's just so much that goes into your story that is almost just, I mean, by chance. It's a chance encounter with the right person, the right time. You went through a stage of just not that idea, not that idea. You sort of gave them a slight road test, or at least went through the thought experiment, and where you ended up is, it's just, I always think people have got this absolutely dead set idea. They've got their people, they kind of go towards it, but you kind of went, no, there's something, and I'm going to find it, and then these things all aligns, and here you are.
Yeah, well, if you think of a startup, if you have, like, you look at the problem we're going after and you go, oh, it's because software's not talking to each other. So initially, all you would do is go, well, let's get all the APIs and let's drive them all together and problem solved, right? But the issue, and I think where a lot of I can't really speak to other companies, but our focus in that is there's no IP built when you just connect an API there and an API there. Like, anybody can do that. Anyone with an ounce of development skill and capability can likely build that. Like, the true understanding is who can get closer to the customer that you're working with, and then wrap your arms around them and solve their problems that they're having on a daily basis. And again, like, I keep coming back to how much of an impact Enrico's had in, like, the discipline that we've instilled from day one. But he almost refused to start building for the first 6 months, and I couldn't understand why, and it was a little bit frustrating. And he was just like, "What are we going to build?" I was just like, "We're going to integrate these things like Microsoft to this, da da da." And he was just like, "Go and win a client and see if they're going to pay. And if they pay, then there's clearly a problem. And if they don't pay, then there's no problem. So let's not build that stuff. Like, why would we try and scale if nobody's going to use it?" And that to me was the biggest lesson to this point in time. And startup number 2 or 3 that Enrico and I would inevitably do together in the future, like, the number one thing I'd go and do is win a customer before we've written a code line of anything and figure out what we're going to build around it. Like, it's so instilled in us now.
That's cool. Yeah, it's real sort of MVP approach, right? It's as low cost and agile as possible, really.
Big time.
The interesting question, a question I'm interested in finding out is, so I'm kind of understanding your initial sales and onboarding process when you kicked off.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you're very highly consultative, highly engaged, and then basically manually do what you've got to do to get that solution in place, and then start thinking about how you can extrapolate on that and build out something that's automated and easier to onboard. So from there, what does the sales and onboarding processes look like now for a customer that comes on with you today?
Yeah, really well trodden path now. Like, one of the huge parts when we're speaking with an MSP is actually understanding how they've made decisions in their Autotask or ConnectWise, because the IP that we've built is not around, oh, we can talk with Microsoft or this distributor or, like, any software vendor out there. It's not. That's not really the IP that that we learned in the first 9 months doing this stuff manually. The IP that we've understood is it's our job to connect to how they've made decisions in their PSA, and no MSP is the same. No MSP is the same in how they've made a decision for certain clients to have this type of billing arrangement. So we've got a very well trodden path now of extracting information out of there through their PSA. And again, it's just a view that's automatically built inside of CloudOlive, and it helps us understand how they've configured in ConnectWise their agreements or in Autotask their contracts. And then from there, when we understand it, like, what we're trying to understand is, where do they have real complexity that's completely non-standard, because either we can help them make changes in their PSA, or we need to figure out a way to bake it into our system and configure it. Okay. And for the first 6 months, we were like, oh man, I don't think this is solvable. Like, as if you have that decision? Why have you got that? Why do you have 4 different Microsoft tenants going to one customer inside of Autotask or ConnectWise? Like, why would you ever have that? But as we went further on, another client's got something similar. Another one. Okay, so we're going to have to solve this. We're going to have to figure out a way which has never been done ever before across any bit of software. Think about that. And that's the cool thing about startup innovation, because you got a blank slate. So you want to try and navigate your way to something that has never been solved versus like doing something very similar to another company. Because again, there's no IP in that. You'll get disrupted.
Yeah, that's fair. It's got to be some secret sauce, some special sauce in that, and it sounds like you found it. What about like markets? Talk to me about, like, you're obviously in NZ, AU. Your first customer's in NZ. You said you're based in AU. Have you gone every country's a target, or have you limited your focus initially to the markets you know best?
No, it's anyone who runs Autotask and ConnectWise. So we've got we've actually had really good traction in the UK and Ireland, and partly I think because I've lived in both of those countries. So again, the LinkedIn discipline of just weekly, month, like every week we're doing stuff. It's naturally just rippling through the likes of all the colleagues that I had at Datto and Autotask in the UK, and they're all off and doing different MSP things now. And like, it's just that consistency. And because Autotask was a US based company, there's lots of ex-colleagues that are out there and they're commenting on it. They understand the problem really intimately. So I think it's just where we've got, primarily from LinkedIn, actually, where we've got the connections. It's just bit by bit, just rip it out, and the messaging's getting out there. But yeah, US naturally is a big focus for us. Will be even more so when we're a little bit further ahead. But UK, France, Norway, Australia, New Zealand, it's pretty much anyone who uses Autotask and ConnectWise that we've got active clients.
Just going back to that LinkedIn approach, it's obviously been so critical to your marketing and sales strategy. The content you're putting out there, is there a particular format? Are you going with blogs? Are you doing videos? Are you doing sort of just stuff on your iPhone as you go to the office? And of that, whatever form it takes, is it largely about sort of creating the demand through an education piece, or is it more about trying to generate leads off that platform directly?
No, I think in today's day and age that people will naturally gravitate towards, like, if they enjoy what you put out there and they're interested in it, then they're just going to keep coming back. And I'm sure that all the algorithms kick in if you're looking at something more than once. It's going to keep flowing up. So it actually, I wish I could say that, it's all planned out. It's all we've got the next 6 months rolled out. Truth is, when I'm walking the dog in the morning and I get a burst of inspiration on a Tuesday morning, I'm like, I'm going to do that one. And I know that some colleagues around me were like, "Oh man, I wish you were more organized around this stuff." But when it comes through without having to try, and it's more natural, that chances are that's going to be the one that may go okay and may go well. So, but we want to try different things. Like, one of the pieces that we found really helps our partners is the agnostic nature, how we can connect to any billing scenario. And there's some really crazy stuff that we've figured out along the way for different MSPs, that native integrations between a distributor and Autotask or whatever, it's just not, I don't know. I wonder if they're just not close enough to the problem, or have an Enrico that can solve it with tech. So we're definitely looking to educate the market more on some of the differing things that we've solved, which they may relate to.
Okay, which is a smart play. What about the I guess there's a better word here, but spread, I suppose, the increase in the size of the ecosystem that the app and SaaS vendor ecosystem that MSPs are working with. Is it your experience that there's just an ever increasing number of those vendors that MSPs are engaging with, and therefore the size of this problem is only getting, well, maybe not the size, but certainly the problem. Well, yes, the size and the complexity of the problem is increasing.
I think definitely. Yeah, you look at what others are talking about, how there's, what are the numbers, like 175,000 SaaS vendors now. There's going to be 1 million by 2030. And it's just because it's low barrier to entry now. Like, it's very easy to spin something up and have a go, and it's all low code, and so you can just get more up and out quicker. So that's definitely going to maintain. But if you look at some of the big vendors in the space, like they're trying to solve this problem and consolidate down the number of like vendor fatigue that Kaseya are referring to. Like, they've got 25 odd, maybe more products now in their stack. And you look at the likes of Pax8 who've recently launched here, and I think in the US they got, I don't know, 70 or 80 different SaaS vendors. So there's some really big players focused on this consolidation problem, and it's interesting to see how it plays out. Like we sort of sit in the middle, and we don't care who you buy from. Like, you're not tied into anyone. We can just solve it. Any vendor, any distributor at all. And when you look at a Kaseya, who the benefit they got is they're looking to control the entire supply chain of software. So they own the software. They distribute the software through their reps, right? This direct sales model, or through the MSPs as well. But then you look at the distributors, and they're originally, and there's tons of them, like there's 50 plus here in Australia alone. So there's probably 20 times that in the States. It's extremely fragmented market with, again, pretty low barriers to entry. But they solved the problem. They removed fragmentation in the supply chain by consolidating vendors. And now, like, it's really down to some distributors here who are more, they're looking to own more of that supply chain and not farm out an integration between their platform into the PSAs. And I think it's table stakes now. I think that they have to, and they can't. It has to be they need to solve it. It's not a tick box exercise anymore, which it once was. That the likes of Pax8 who've launched here, and they've got epic people now running that thing. They've stayed close to their customers, and they're 8 or 9 years in, and they built something phenomenal. And I expect that to grow very fast over the next couple of years.
Okay. So I don't know if this is a question that you've got a set opinion on, but it sort of relates to the whole SaaS play. I was reading the other day that with the, I guess, squeeze coming on a bit on profit margins, and particularly for software companies that maybe haven't been focused on profitability as much as perhaps sub numbers for future growth, with the change in the economic environment. Yeah. There's a reluctance to persevere with freemium models, or sort of, that initially, that sort of free intro offer that most SaaS providers run with. Have you seen any change in approach from the SaaS providers that your customers are working with?
I wouldn't say so much. Nothing that springs to mind from the software vendors that we're sort of helping and integrating in with. We're pretty close to it from the VC side of things, and the messaging, and the communications that go out from our venture capital and others that we're in talks with. And I think what comes down to it, if you've got strong foundations as a software company, and you're solving a problem, and you're not too reliant on external capital because you've got good business fundamentals underpinning it, like, you should be okay. You should be okay. And if it's at the other end of the spectrum, then the worst thing would be to have a significant down round, and you dilute you lose control of your company after going so hard for so long. And it's something that from our personal perspective, we don't want to ever be in that position. So there's a metric that a big VC in the States talked about around burn multiple. So how much net ARR, so annual recurring revenue, are adding this month versus your burn rate for the month. And the A plus players are all under 1 year, which means if you just keep doing what you're doing, you're going to end up becoming profitable, providing you've got enough runway. So we looked at that, and we focused pretty hard on that, and it worked in our favor. I think it's we got well below that burn multiple very quickly, and we just want to maintain that now, and then we're in control. We don't need to worry too much about it.
Now, I imagine too, in an economic environment where there's certainly a lot of talk of recession in the States, particularly, it's a fairly confused picture at the moment. But let's say that ultimately there could be some tough times ahead. When you're essentially in the game of cost control and business efficiency, that I assume is only highlighting the need for people to look for solutions like yours. So ultimately, not a huge concern.
We just got to stay close. We've just got to continue to solve problems, keep innovating, and you just got. I think that's the biggest part. Just whoever can stay if you're closest to your customer and you're building out meaningful innovation around them, it's hard to be disrupted. And if you're not, and somebody else is closer to your customers than you are, like you will eventually be in it. You will eventually be uprooted by it. And any new startup starts with no tech debt at all. So they're probably 2 years away from knocking on your door and causing you some struggles if you're not, if they get closer to your customers somehow. And it's just something we're adamant about. Just deep in the DNA of what we're building.
How much of a focus is customer acquisition cost for you, and how has that cost gone presumably down, from MSP 10 to MSP 50?
I think that it's something that we keep naturally an eye on what our total costs are per the month, and yes, how much is going towards sales versus building. We at the moment, and this was some advice given us early on, it was like you need to get to around 80 customers initially to be able to then start running cohort information and getting an idea of who your ideal fit is. So it's not something that, like, if we were losing huge sums of money, we'd be all over that, right? But we've got the burn multiple. We understand where we're at. We've got a path to profitability. So we're just hell bent on getting to 80, 90 customers and then sitting back and understanding, okay, who is the ideal fit here? Like, who is the perfect fit for what we have now, and where can we then take that? And it was some advice given to us from another VC. It was just like, you really need to it was actually two different VCs, just like you need to get to 80, 90 customers to understand your pricing models. Okay. Right now, don't try and innovate too much around that, because you'll get it wrong and you'll build tech around the wrong thing. So just keep your head down, keep doing the basics right. And at some point, those types of metrics become exceptionally important when it comes to, like, if I put $1 in here, can I get $5 out? And when you're at that point, that's more Series A, Series B. Like, we're going big at that point. You're raising, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 million bucks if that's the path we choose to go. And you've got the equation is just like, cool. For us, I think it's going to be similar to the Autotask sales model, which is very much a rep-driven model. And I can see it's very, very similar, a lot of similarities to it. So wouldn't be surprised in time if there's a big element of like tapping on the shoulders of everyone I worked with once upon a time when it is time to go big like that.
Okay. How did you actually determine your price points on launch? Was it a process of research with potential customers? Was it a value-based pricing methodology where you kind of went, look, we think we can achieve this, therefore our thing's worth this? Or what was the process?
It was extremely scientific. I mean, we spent months thinking about it. No, I actually went to the first customer, and I actually went to Andrew Johnson from IT Partners, and I went, "Mate, is this a problem?" And he went, "Yep." And I went, "What would you pay for it?" And he went, "This much." And I was like, I almost fell off my chair. And Enrico was next to me. I was like, "All right, keep it cool." It was more than we were expecting. We're like, "Okay, let's get going on it." And then that price point gave us the confidence to ask customer 2, customer 3, customer 4, and they came on straight away. And we're like, oh my God. And I'm really pleased at that, because when we were doing the analysis and pitching for Antler and all the rest of it, like, it was actually, we were 40% cheaper in all of our analysis, but in our pitch and everything to Antler. And then all of a sudden we've gone to market, and the average price now is just increasing the more value that's going into it, our understanding of the problem. And naturally, as we like create more value, we should share in that value with our partners as well. But yeah, it was literally that. I asked a prospect, "Hey, do you have a problem?" "Yep." "What are you willing to pay to solve it?" And there we are. And we were the software for the next 8 months for them.
There you go. The power of research and asking the question. So is it something like the 80-20 rule where 80% of your MSP customers have the same problems, then there's 20% that have some sort of unique outlier that gets you thinking a bit harder? Or is it really that, that you said every MSP is different before? Is it like, how different do you find that out? Like, what's the degree of separation from MSP 1 to 2?
So the key part for us is that they need to run Autotask or ConnectWise. Okay, so we've nailed.
Which is how much of the market?
Somewhere around about 40% of the market, of the addressable market, is likely on Autotask or ConnectWise.
Okay.
And that's in volume, like quantity of companies. If you look at actual revenue and seats and all the rest, like ConnectWise is by far the largest, Autotask is number 2 by a long shot, and then there's some really cool up and coming ones. So that's why we've stayed focused where we are. I guess we've always got an option to at some point go broad, and the deeper we can go, and there's a time limit. We do, like, there's a speed element to it, but the deeper we can go and build something that's completely unique, has a wow factor that grows quickly. And I think this is a perception that often happens, and I certainly had it once upon a time. It was like, if you integrate it into all these things, you're going to grow quicker. And I think it's actually the opposite. I think it's totally the opposite. You want to have one thing that you do better than anybody else in the world, anyone else in the world. You have to be like the number one, and let that go. And then from a position of strength and a defensible moat, you can easily add things on and solve other problems that you've seen around. And I think just maintaining, like building the steel frame foundation, almost just deep focus somewhere. And then at some point you're like, cool, now we can roll it out to PSA 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. And away we go. Because they will all have that same problem. They can then all grow sequentially as quick as one another versus just, I think assuming that going broad is smart. Yeah.
Okay. And when you're talking to these MSPs, which roles within the businesses are usually your biggest champions?
The users of our software are typically finance admin teams, majority of the time. So if the owner of the business is also running this process internally, it's a very quick demonstration. Like, they want this problem removed from their hands. But when someone's got 1 or 2 people in finance, like, because we did their job for the first 9 months, it slots in. Like, it's specifically what they're doing day in and day out. And we've now just, like, through lots of conversations, built a lot more around it. So it's solving other problems that they don't have time to, I guess, spend solving themselves, because they just want to get the billing out the door. They just want to at least get that done, and then move on to whatever else is on their plate. But yeah, generally it's the finance admin teams. We can see a couple of our clients rolling it out to, like, sales teams and account management teams, because we can very easily show what their customers are getting billed. But right now, like, we won't push that just yet. Like, we won't, like, force that by any means. But you can see in time that anyone who's interacting with the customer and needing to feedback that sort of information will likely end up having to log into CloudOlive.
Okay. All right. I think last question for you is, you started pretty much bang on the time that COVID hit. So your ability to kind of do whatever you felt was required to grow the business was somewhat limited. You've now got yourself successfully with great growth to the other side of COVID. I mean, it's still here, but the ability for us to operate our businesses as we see fit has largely returned. So what's next? What's the next 12 months look like for you guys?
Next 12 months for us is to try and transfer the sales that has been done in the founding team to like a growing sales team, and being able to transfer that knowledge and prove that it can be done by somebody else, and move into, like, looking to scale and just moving into the next phase, because you can really feel that we're not far away from product market fit now. Super exciting phase of the company. Super exciting to be able to go through this phase and then build all the other stuff that we know that we can build in time. So for us, it's to go exceptionally deep into the Autotask ConnectWise camp. Like, end up around, like, we want to get to, say, 250, 300 MSPs within that time frame. And yeah, again, from there, just strength to strength to strength. And if we can execute on that, which I've got no doubt that we won't be able to, it gives us a lot of avenues that we can just try things. Like, we can generally try and innovate and have different dev paths in at the same time, and have a bit of fun with it. Like, it's that part of the company where we don't want to wish this away at all. Maybe the first phase, we're glad that's behind us, but the thought of what is to come for Enrico and I and the team is just super exciting, and just keen to get out there and keep building cool stuff for MSPs.
Nice. All right, mate. Well, I wish you all the very best with that. And thank you for coming along and having a chat with us. And hopefully I'll see you in person on the Gold Coast in the not too distant future.
Good man. Thanks, fellas. You're doing a good job. Keep it up.
Cheers, mate. See ya.
See you later.